School Lockdown Horror Story. May 11th, 1991. The day started like any other at Cedar Creek High School. The sun peeked through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the campus grounds. Students bustled through the hallways, their chatter echoing off the lockers as they exchanged weekend plans and last-minute study tips. But as the clock struck noon, an ominous feeling settled over the school. A sense of unease rippled through the air, imperceptible at first, like a distant rumble before a storm. And then, with a suddenness that froze the bustling corridors in their tracks, the intercom crackled to life. Principal Thompson's voice boomed over the speakers, laced with an urgency that sent shivers down spines. "Attention, students and faculty. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. We are now under lockdown. Please proceed to the nearest classroom immediately and lock all doors and windows. Do not, I repeat, do not open them, for any reason, until further notice." Panic swept through the school like wildfire. Students exchanged wide-eyed glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. What could possibly be happening? Was it a threat from outside, or something far more sinister lurking within? In Mrs. Roberts's history class, Lily Matthews huddled in her seat, her fingers trembling as she clutched her textbook to her chest. Beside her, Alex Ramirez stared wide-eyed at the door, his mind racing with 1,000 terrifying possibilities. Outside, the once bustling hallways fell eerily silent, save for the distant sound of footsteps echoing off the linoleum floors. The air grew thick with tension as minutes stretched into hours, each passing moment feeling like an eternity. Hours turned into an agonizing eternity as anxiety gnawed at the edges of sanity. The intercom remained silent, offering no solace or explanation. Whispers of fear rippled through the classrooms, rumors swirling like a toxic fog. In Mr. Thompson's chemistry lab, Sarah Jenkins glanced nervously at the clock, her stomach churning with dread. "What do you think is happening?" she whispered to her lab partner, Mark. Mark shook his head, his jaw clenched with tension. "I don't know, but it can't be good. I heard someone say there's an armed intruder in the school." Sarah's blood ran cold at the thought. The mere idea of a gunman stalking the halls sent chills down her spine. She glanced around the dimly lit lab, her eyes darting to the shadows lurking in every corner. Meanwhile, in the gymnasium, Coach Thompson paced back and forth, his brow furrowed with concern. A sea of frightened face Aya stared back at him, their eyes wide with fear. "We need to stay calm," he urged, though his own voice trembled with uncertainty. "Help is on the way. We just need to stay put and wait for further instructions." But even as he spoke, a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, a nagging feeling that they were not alone in the school. Something sinister lurked in the shadows, watching and waiting with bated breath. As the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted campus, the tension reached its breaking point. A deafening crash shattered the silence, sending shockwaves rippling through the school. In an instant, chaos erupted. Screams echoed off the walls as students and teachers alike scrambled for cover. Lockers rattled as panicked footsteps thundered through the hallways, desperate to escape the encroaching darkness. In Mrs. Roberts' classroom, Lily's heart leaped into her throat as the door burst open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness. She watched in horror as it stalked into the room, its eyes gleaming with malice. Without a second thought, she grabbed Alex's hand and bolted for the nearest exit, her pulse pounding in her ears. Behind them, the intruder gave chase, its footsteps echoing like a death knell in the empty halls. They raced through the labyrinthine corridors, their breath coming in ragged gasps as they ducked and weaved through the shadows. But no matter how fast they ran, the darkness seemed to swallow them whole, its tendrils reaching out to ensnare them in its icy grip. Just when all hope seemed lost, they stumbled upon a hidden staircase leading down into the bowels of the school. With no other options left, they descended into the depths, their hearts pounding in their chests. But as they reached the bottom, they were greeted by a sight that chilled them to the bone. The walls were lined with cages, each containing a twisted abomination that defied description. Eyes glinted in the darkness as the creatures snarled and snapped, their hunger palpable in the stale air. Lily's blood ran cold as she realized the true horror of their situation. They were not alone in the school. Something far worse than any armed intruder lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim them as its next victims. With nowhere left to run, they huddled together in the darkness, their breath coming in shallow gasps as they waited for the end to come. And as the first tendrils of dawn crept over the horizon, they knew that they were trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. For more scary odd horror stories, please subscribe us. School trip. Lost in the shadows. It was the 12th of June in 1995, a day like any other, or so the students of Ridgemont High thought. Excitement buzzed through the air as they gathered in the school courtyard, ready for their annual end-of-year trip. This year, their destination was the historic Blackwood Manor, a sprawling estate nestled deep in the heart of the countryside. As the bus wound its way along the narrow country roads, the students chattered eagerly, their laughter mingling with the hum of the engine. But as they approached the gates of Blackwood Manor, a hush fell over the bus, and a sense of unease settled over the passengers. The manor loomed before them, its ancient walls cloaked in shadows, and its windows like empty eyes staring out into the night. The air seemed to grow colder as they stepped off the bus, and a feeling of dread crept over them like a shroud. Their teacher, Mr. Thompson, led the group inside, his footsteps echoing off the marble floors of the grand entrance hall. The interior of the manor was as imposing as its exterior, with towering ceilings and dark, winding corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. As they explored the vast labyrinth of rooms and hallways, the students couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Shadows flitted at the edges of their vision, and strange whispers echoed through the empty halls. But they pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of Blackwood Manor. As night fell, Mr. Thompson gathered the students in the grand ballroom for a ghost tour led by the manor's caretaker, an elderly gentleman with a haunted look in his eyes. He regaled them with tales of tragic deaths and restless spirits, his voice trembling with fear as he spoke of the horrors that lurked within the manor's walls. The students listened with rapt attention, their eyes wide with terror as the caretaker described the various hauntings that had plagued Blackwood Manor for generations. But as the tour came to an end, they laughed off his warnings, dismissing them as nothing more than the ramblings of a superstitious old man. That night, as they settled into their sleeping bags in the grand ballroom, the students tried to shake off the lingering sense of unease that hung over them like a fog. But as they drifted off to sleep, strange dreams began to plague their minds. Dreams of shadowy figures and whispered voices that seemed to echo through the darkness. One by one, they awoke to find themselves alone in the ballroom. Their classmates vanished without a trace. Panic set in as they searched the manor for any sign of their friends, but all they found were empty rooms and echoing corridors. As they stumbled through the darkness, their footsteps echoing off the walls like a dirge, they began to realize the true horror of Blackwood Manor. It was a place of nightmares, a realm where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred and twisted, and where the spirits of the past held sway over the present. In the end, only a handful of students managed to escape the clutches of Blackwood Manor, their minds shattered by the horrors they had witnessed within its walls. They would never forget the terror of that night, nor the chilling realization that some places are better left undisturbed. And as they boarded the bus and left Blackwood Manor behind, they knew that they would carry the scars of their ordeal with them for the rest of their lives, a grim reminder of the price of curiosity in a world where the line between reality and nightmare is thin indeed. For more scary odd horror stories, please subscribe us.